Morant with a running start. Elevate! Oh, it dunks! Oh, my goodness!
Tie game in overtime. Gasol will turn. His heat is gone! Memphis on top. 7-10 remaining.
Conley now with three. Count it! A 15-point lead for Memphis. And Blake Griffin gets into it on the floor with Randolph. Hard to tell if there are any punches being thrown under there, but Griffin took acceptance.
Adams going long. Morant! He hit it! Ja Morant! Insanity!
You gotta be kidding me.
Welcome to Grits and Grinds, a Memphis Grizzlies podcast. My name is Keith Parrish. The Grizzlies lost to the Trailblazers on Wednesday night, their third loss in 4 games. They failed to score 100 points for the first time all season. On today's episode, I'm going to talk about the loss, I'm going to talk about the standings, and I'm going to get right into it. The Grizzlies did not gain ground on those teams ahead of them. They did not rebound from the blowout loss to the Kings. No, they lost once again by double digits. Jaren Jackson Jr. struggled with foul trouble. They fell down by 21 points in this game. Eventually, they did cut it to a single-digit game, but then Jaren committed an offensive foul, got a technical, and I would say overall, this game had a little bit of everything that worries you if you're a Grizzlies fan. First and foremost, no Ja Morant. Ja Morant still out with his injured hamstring. We do not know the severity of that injury. We don't know if he's going to be able to play the road game against the Clippers or the one against the Thunder coming up. Then remember, after this 5-game road trip ends, where they're already 0-2 on this road trip, they come home to play the Lakers and the Celtics and the Warriors. Very tough schedule going on, but this game had a little bit of everything. No Ja Morant. Okay, that's a concern we had coming into the year. The rest of it, the Grizzlies got dominated on the glass. That hasn't been an issue for most of the year, but it was a concern coming into the season. And in this one, the Trailblazers had 22 offensive rebounds. The Grizzlies missed 55 shots, but somehow only rebounded 10 of their own missed shots. That's a 18% offensive rebound rate, which is way lower than their season average. But you had Jalen Wells struggling to score. He couldn't deliver. The second-round rookie was just 1 for 7 from the field. Jaren was ineffective. He struggled going against the Blazers' good defense. He turned the ball over 5 times, and of course, he got in foul trouble. Also, we had Taylor Jenkins benching Jaren with 5 fouls, down 18 in the fourth quarter, saving him for God knows what. Then you had Zach Edey getting played off the court. He sort of got benched for John Conchar at the start of the second half. You had Brandon Clark leaving with soreness, unable to finish the game. The Grizzlies struggled to make three-pointers once again. They struggled to defend. You had Luke Kennard not making three-pointers for the third straight game, or 3 of his last 4 games, excuse me. And also, going to the coaching staff, the rotation was completely abandoned. That was game 70, and it still feels like, to me, Taylor Jenkins has no idea who his best players are. No clue. I'm not saying I even have a perfect idea of who the best players are, but we're in game 70. We're in our third straight loss where the rotation gets completely abandoned. They seemingly start the game with one game plan, and then they're like, this doesn't work. Hey, Jay Huff, you go try. Hey, John Conchar, you go try. This is the loss to the Blazers, the loss to the Kings, and then 4 games ago, the home loss to the Cavaliers. We're talking about the initial rotation being abandoned completely by the third quarter. I don't know if that's a way to win basketball games, just hoping things happen. But the overall big picture stuff is the Grizzlies continue not playing lockdown defense, and this is not a short-term problem. Also, this loss to the Blazers was not a fluke. It was not the Grizzlies overlooked their opponent and they laid an egg on the road. No, I maintain this was not a fluke because the Blazers have played as well as the Grizzlies for over a month. Since January 1st, that's just an arbitrarily chosen date. I didn't even hunt around to find the numbers that looked the best. Since January 1st, the Blazers are 5th in the NBA in defensive rating. Over that same time frame, the Grizzlies are 19th in defensive rating. I was posting some of this stuff on social media where over the past 2 months, if you just turn it back from 2 months from yesterday, again, arbitrarily chosen. I'm just looking for big time frames. The numbers looked pretty good for what I wanted to say. Over the last 2 months, the Blazers have a better record overall than the Grizzlies. Going into the game where the Grizzlies were 4.5-point favorites, I was like, the Blazers are 10-4 in their last home games. They've played as good as the Grizzlies for well over a month, maybe arguably 2 months. Why are the Grizzlies 4.5-point favorites with no Ja Morant? Well, it turned out the Blazers defense shut down the Grizzlies. It turned out Denny Avdia could not be stopped. He crushed the Grizzlies. It turned out the Zach Edey, Donovan Clingan showdown, advantage Clingan. There are some scary numbers for our Memphis Grizzlies, and it's not just that they're right now staring down starting the playoffs on the road. By the way, if the season ended today, they'd play the Nuggets in the 4-5 matchup. The Lakers beat the shorthanded Nuggets on Wednesday night and rose up to 3rd. Meanwhile, the Rockets won their 8th straight on Wednesday. They're now 2 full games ahead of the Grizzlies, but of course they have the tiebreaker over the Grizzlies, meaning they're essentially 3 games up on the Grizzlies. This is with 12 games for the Grizzlies to play. But the Grizzlies have played 70 games. Let's play a little game with first half of the season versus second half of the season. And again, I don't have the internet right now. My internet's out of my house. So I'm just using my phone. I'm not digging deep on stats. I'm not finding the perfect numbers. I just said, I'm curious what the numbers look like first half of the season versus the second half of the season. Through the first 35 games, and maybe you could find numbers that look even worse than this, but through the first 35 games, the Grizzlies had the 4th best defense. This is according to the website Cleaning the Glass, where they filter out garbage time possessions. They had the 4th best defensive rating through the first half of the season. Over the last 35 games, we're talking 2.5 months of the season, an exact halfway point. Over the last 35 games, the Grizzlies are 20th in defensive rating. This is not just a short, bad slump for the team looking disengaged on the defensive end. This is not a post-trade deadline thing, even though the post-trade deadline numbers are appalling. We're talking about the entire last half of the season. The Grizzlies are 20th in defensive rating. They're 7th in offensive rating in that same time frame. The first 35 games of the year, the Grizzlies were 5th in offensive rating. So they were 5th in offense, 4th in defense. They went 23-12 over their first 35 games. Over the last 35 games, 7th in offense, 20th in defensive rating. Now, I think there is some frustration when the team loses. There's frustration with the coaching staff. Taylor Jenkins can't teach them how to play defense. I guess. I think because my preseason expectations were maybe a little bit lower than everybody else's, I've always kind of thought it was a roster issue. I was surprised how well they played early on. Now this has been like, I don't know, the chickens have come home to roost, which I think is the correct saying there. The Grizzlies just haven't been as good as we hoped. I don't know how much of it is coaching. I don't know how much of it is just the players not executing. I don't know how much of it is the players' overall talent level not being what we hoped it was, or the talent level being what some of us thought it was, which is, hey, this is like a 45, 46, 47 win team, and they're probably, an underdog to make it out of the first round. Now, they were so dominant for stretches this regular season. They won so many games by blowout. Their net rating got to be so huge that we were like, all right, maybe this team's really good. Maybe they'll be able to handle their business in the first round. But that's not the current case. Also, going back to the coaching, there are legit criticisms that I already said about the guys who are playing. And I'm not saying because you played John Conchar, like Taylor Jenkins, you've lost it. For me, it's more about hey, you chose which guys were going to start and you chose which guys were going to be in the rotation in the first quarter. And if you abandon it one game because things are going wrong, okay. But to abandon it in 3 out of the last 4 games, to have like a plan you start with and then just know, hey, if we fall down by 10, 12 points, we're pulling the plug. We're going to plan B. I don't think that's the way to win basketball games. I don't think the players are going to play their best if they're not certain what their roles are every night. And at some point, I think you have to consider, are we going to keep starting Jalen Wells? Are we going to keep starting Zach Edey? Are we going to keep starting both of them? Because right now, the formula, it's not necessarily working. Now, maybe it's all just about Ja Morant not being available. But again, Ja Morant potentially not being available, Ja Morant missing 20 to 25 games a season, that is a known quantity. That is absolutely what you plan for. You have to plan for that. That is the expectation. That's why I made my preseason prediction. So I'm like, well, we get 60 games a year in a good year. That's a good year for Ja Morant. And right now, going back to the trade deadline stats again, when you look at the team's record since the trade deadline, where you got rid of a useful rotation, 2 useful rotation players, but specifically thinking about the position Marcus Smart played when healthy, it's just another ball handler. It's another fill-in. It's another emergency stopgap for games that Ja Morant misses. Scottie Pippen Jr. returned in this game. Scottie Pippen Jr. played well in this game. But like Scottie Pippen Jr. as your only point guard on a roster that you claimed was, in the mix for the title. I mean, we scoffed at that. But you got to have more ball handling. Like Desmond Bane can't do it all by himself. I mean, Desmond Bane, I guess, was fine in this game. Desmond Bane plus Luke Kennard, point guard by committee. I don't think it's going to be good enough to beat the good teams or the good defensive teams. Again, the Blazers are 18-12 in their last 30 games. That's basically 2 months. The Blazers are solid. The Blazers defend hard. After starting the year off, in a rough manner, Blazers are a solid basketball team right now. They're only 2 games back of the playoffs, or at least the play-in. The Suns and Mavericks, you got to keep your eyes on the Blazers. But like Santi Aldama, he returned. He was a bright spot. If we're talking about bright spots from this game, Santi Aldama didn't miss a beat offensively. He played 27 minutes, scored 16 points, made 4 out of 6 2-pointers, 2 out of 4 3-pointers. Now, I'm okay with Santi not starting because I did like how his minutes went. I don't know if he was on any kind of minutes limitation on his return from the injury absence. But if you play 27 minutes and he's basically ending every quarter, that seemed totally fine. Also, you look at Scottie Pippen Jr., who tied this random record by our guy Nick Calathis. Scottie did, in fact, pick up his 8th straight game coming off the bench with at least 2 steals, so he ties Nick Calathis for the longest such streak in franchise history. Like, Scottie keeps providing a spark. I think you compliment the way he played. But when Edey gets played off the court, when Jalen Wells doesn't make shots, when Jaren struggles from the field, 5 for 18 for Jaren. Also, again, 5 turnovers and 5 personal fouls. Zach Edey didn't even get a rebound in the first half. I mean, Zach Edey did play in the second half, but he was behind Jay Huff and John Conchar. I mean, Conchar, he just did the John Conchar things. Jay Huff was fine. I mean, the Brandon Clark thing is a big deal. Brandon Clark's one of your best players. And he's always had these little issues with his body not holding up to the rigors of the full season. That was a concern coming into the year. So with no Brandon Clark, you're forced to play. I get it. You're forced to play weird lineups because of that. That's why Jay Huff gets in to try to stretch the floor a little bit. But you're not guarding the three-point line. That's one of the big reasons why Zach Edey did not start the second half. The Blazers are just getting wide open three after wide open three. But again, not a fluke, not a short-term thing. It's a long-term thing. Grizzlies have not been good enough for a while now. And now we're staring at, is this team, it looked like they were going to cruise to 50 wins. Now there's 12 games left. You're 43-27. You got a little bit lucky in the standings watch that the Timberwolves lost to the Pelicans. But right now, you are 2.5 games up on the Warriors, and they've been on a tear. The Clippers have won 4 straight games, and you got to play them next. If you lose to the Clippers, well, then you're only 2.5 games from falling down into the play-in. I didn't think that was possible. I mean, 2 weeks ago, I thought it was basically impossible. I thought, your absolute floor was the 6th spot. But the Timberwolves, the Clippers, and the Warriors, all these teams are playing well. And if you look up and down the Western Conference, which teams are playing poorly? Which teams competing for a playoff berth are not at their best? The only team, it's the Grizzlies. I mean, the Nuggets have missed Jokic and Jamal Murray for the last 2 games. But the Thunder, the Lakers, the Nuggets, the Rockets, the Warriors, the Clippers, the Timberwolves, all these teams are playing good basketball right now. All these teams are playing good basketball. Meanwhile, you're 8-11 since the trade deadline. I don't have a lot of pick-me-ups for this one. Although I did think Vince Williams Jr. looked a little bit better. Yes, he missed his only 2 3-point attempts, but I felt like he actually did a good job of declining some relatively open looks to swing the ball. He was whipping the ball around out there. I thought physically there weren't any embarrassing moments where it seemed like he was getting blown by or messing up on defense. I thought Vince, he left me wanting more, which is a good thing. That part's a good thing. Beyond that, Santi's back, so that's going to help. But the Grizzlies right now searching for answers. And it doesn't seem like the coaching staff has these answers. And they're really up against it. By the way, one more stat about Luke Kennard. So Luke Kennard missed both of his 3-point attempts. In Luke Kennard's last 10 games, he's failed to make a 3-pointer in 6 of them. He's shooting 28% on 3-pointers in those 10 games. And that includes a game where he went 7 for 9 from 3. The 30-point game he had against the Jazz. And in just his last 4 games, he's 1 for 13 on 3-pointers. I don't know what that's about either. The Grizzlies as a team made 8 3-pointers. Trailblazers made 18. Grizzlies had 10 offensive rebounds. The Trailblazers had 22. But the lack of defense, just the big takeaway. The defense has not been good enough, as you know. But we're talking about half of the season. The last 35 games, the Grizzlies are 20th in defensive rating. Tell your friends that one. Anyways, the Grizzlies road trip continues. They play the Clippers, big game, huge game on Friday night. Then they have several days off before they have to play at the Jazz. The Jazz won a huge tanking battle / lost the tanking battle. They won the basketball game against the Wizards. Both teams were trying hard to lose. Then after that, you got to play the Thunder, and then it's home for the Lakers, the Celtics, and the Warriors. The last 6 games, East Coast road trip to Miami, to Detroit, to Charlotte, back home for Minnesota, and then second night of a back-to-back, you have to play the Nuggets. That's for the tiebreaker right there. Huge game where you have to play it less than 24 hours after your previous game. The Thursday night game on April 10th, That's a home TNT game against the Timberwolves at 8:30. Guess what? A spot in the play-in could be on the line. If the if the Timberwolves continue their current run of play and the Grizzlies continue their current run of play, that could be a very nervous game. And then, of course, the second night of the back-to-back, you got to fly to Denver and play for an 8 Central Time, 7 local time tip, and then they finish the season against the Mavericks. Anyways, thanks everybody for listening. If you want to support the show, do that at patreon.com/fastbreakbreakfast. If you're already a supporter, make sure you go and fill out your March Madness bracket. We're sending a prize package to the winner of both the men's and women's bracket challenge. That's at patreon.com/fastbreakbreakfast. All right, we're going to have a great weekend. I'll talk to you soon. Go Grizz.